Hey everyone, it's been over 2 minutes and I haven't been raped yet. Or any of that other silly nonsense. Hi, I'm Diana Davison. Now, in last week's video, I made a statement that female genital mutilation, the activists around that, are radical feminists. And there was some confusion. So I want to address that and explain to you why I was confused that they didn't see the radical feminism behind these activists. So, for those of you who might be like me, very visual thinkers, I'm going to throw in a few puppies here and there just to create a little mental safe space. And just let you know up front, I will not be talking about the act of FGM so much as the activism of FGM. And I think that it's actually fairly obvious how radical this type of feminism is. And hopefully you'll be surprised and learn a little bit at the same time and enjoy a few puppies. Oh, look at him. Isn't he cute? Look at him go. From The Guardian, in the UK, feminists have put such pressure on the Crown Prosecution Service that they charged a doctor, Dr. Dharmasena, with FGM in 2014. And this charge was seen to be a witch hunt. All the doctor had done was perform an emergency surgery on somebody who was not his own patient, and he had to make a quick decision in order to stop bleeding and in order to help deliver the baby safely. I think it's easy to see the comparison with feminists demanding more convictions in rape cases, and if they have to take away due process and rights to fair trials in order to get those, the convictions are more important than whether or not the case is solid and whether or not the person is actually guilty. There have been a number of articles on Spiked Online talking about the outrageous methods being used by these campaigners, and one of the people writing for them is Brid Hehir, operates a site called shiftingsands.org.uk. I'll put links to that below. A very interesting article on her site. She interviews a woman named Asha, who had FGM performed on her, and says, "I hate that word. It's not me. I've had it done, but I'm not mutilated." They go through a number of issues dealing with myths being propagated by the FGM campaigners and how the families that have these acts performed, when they do, are actually very loving parents. That it is not child abuse, and the people involved do not see it as child abuse. It is a rite of passage. And they also deal with this so-called cutting season. Asha laughs in exasperation. There is no such thing. We all find this such a strange notion. All right, so I'll put a bunch of those links below. But the main things you need to be aware of are they are declaring an epidemic where it doesn't exist in the Western countries. They're demanding more prosecutions and convictions to prove this so-called epidemic. Reminding you of rape culture, anyone? They're inflating the statistics and the scope of the crimes being combining things like sexual assault with rape. They combine different types of FGM, some of which are equivalent to the labiaplasty that goes on. A couple of puppies for you here. And they are stigmatizing people with victim complexes and ignoring when their victims disagree with the status. Remind you of the Mary Koss studies, anyone? They're labeling anyone who disagrees with their campaign as racist and apologist, just as if you are against the rape culture campaigns, you're a misogynist and a rape apologist. So I'll put a bunch of links in the low bar, but I'm going to focus today on a statement that was issued by a doctor. She has a PhD. She lives in America and she's from Sierra Leone. And she is an activist campaigning against the anti-FGMers. So she summarizes the main arguments, the things you need to know about. You can have a position on FGM. My position is that I don't think it should be done. But your position on the campaigns should be based on information, such as what this woman is offering. Statement by African Women Are Free to Choose. Washington, D.C., USA. We are concerned about recent accusations that the Sierra Leone Association of Journalists made against an important and valued female institution in Sierra Leone, the Bondo Sodality of Women. Though we do not condone the use of violence or intimidation, We are also deeply affected by the inflammatory impact of language, such as female genital mutilation, FGM. We declare categorically that this language is offensive, demeaning, and an assault against our identities as women, our prerogatives to uphold our cultural definitions of womanhood, including determining for ourselves what bodily integrity means to us African women, from ethnic groups that practice female and male initiation as parallel and mutually constitutive processes in our societies. All right, so first of all, the word mutilated was substituted for cutting or circumcision by a feminist in the 70s, not by medical personnel. And it is a very inaccurate and offensive description. The people who've had it performed do not see themselves as mutilated. A small minority of them do, and we'll get to that later. We declare that thus far the representation of female circumcision, its social and ideological meaning in terms of gender and female sexuality and impact, if any, on reproductive health and psychosexual well-being has been, over the last 30 years, dominated by a small but vocal number of African women that make up the Inter-African Committee, IAC, with the enormous backing, if not outright instigation, of powerful Western feminist organizations and media personalities. Through aggressive use of the media to portray African women as passive and powerless victims of barbaric patriarchal African societies, their efforts have succeeded in influencing and tainting the objectivity of such institutions as World Health Organization and UNICEF, among other international organizations that have taken the lead role in promulgating anti-FGM policies and legislation worldwide. This is activism coming from outsiders to the community. Within these communities, the majority enjoy their practice and want to maintain it. They do not have the support of the locals in terms of the policies being passed by Western countries. Through political pressure from first world countries on whose aid they continue to depend, as well as internal political expediency, several African countries have introduced anti-FGM legislation over against the full knowledge, participation, and desires of the majority of affected women. This will not happen in Sierra Leone. I just love that assertion. This is one fiery woman. Thus far, the negative medical or health claims about various forms of FC have been disputed as grossly exaggerated by several independent medical researchers and practitioners. The claims that various forms of FC reduce or eliminate sexual desire and feeling in women have also been disproven by affected women themselves, the researchers who relentlessly question them, and medical doctors who examine and treat them. We can provide ample references for anyone who is interested in any of this work. Now, that last bit is important because you need to understand this activism not only has resulted in persecutions like the doctor I mentioned earlier, but young girls and women from these countries are being selected for physical examination. They must pull down their pants and be inspected in their genitals in order to enter a country, and they are questioned at airports when they have an extended visit to their home country. This is very invasive. That FC was designed by men to control women's sexuality is a Western feminist myth, constructed in a disturbing dismissal of African gender models of male and female complementarity, and of our own creativity, power, and agency as adult women in the social world. The assertion that FC violates the rights of children falters in the face of World Health Organization's promotion of routine neonatal male circumcision to protect against HIV infection in southern Africa. Now, this myth that it's a patriarchal oppression of women meant to subjugate them is so far from the truth. The people who perform these acts are not men. It's groups of women, and it's a valued rite of passage for them. They consider themselves strong, powerful women, and this is something that they have chosen as a ritual for themselves. So this patriarchy myth, feminists have been so desperate to find patriarchy, they just have to paint it over everything they can find in order to substantiate their claims. It's kind of like trying to find weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, okay? Just as male circumcision has not ended and is even now seen as desirable with health and aesthetic benefits, so too, FC has not ended and is even desired and being repackaged as vaginal cosmetic surgeries or designer vaginas by affluent segments of the very population of Western women that today condemn us as barbaric. I think it's time for a few puppies here. Look at those little guys. Oh my God, it's so cute. All right, so this is the last bit I'm going to use from the statement. I'll put a link to that and also this essay written by Hehir, which is kind of essential reading if you're going to have an opinion on FGM activism. It's called The Emperor's New Clothes or something like that. So anyways, link to that one below. And I'm going to do this last little bit because I think it's important, not just in terms of female cutting issues, but also I think that people campaigning against men's circumcision could learn a little bit from her advice here. We recognize the legitimacy of claims of the minority of circumcised African women who view their experience in a negative light. Like the minority of circumcised men who have organized anti-circumcision campaigns, they emphasize their experiences of unnecessary pain and suffering and see their genital surgeries as an attack on their gender identities. We have no problem with these women, just as their male counterparts, organizing to seek change, or even referring to their experiences and their own bodies as mutilated. However, these women, like their male counterparts, must take their case to the bulk of others who are circumcised and convince them of their worldview through peaceful, democratic, and lawful means. So the main lesson to take away here for intactivists and so on is that if you're going to categorize what's being done as barbaric and you're going to deem the people who've been subjected to it as mutilated, you're going to meet some resistance. Now, the activism against FGM in other countries has been fairly successful because it's other countries. So the people that they're getting to make these laws and to make the whole thing illegal and to try and jail people for it, it's successful because it's not your own culture. So ultimately, this type of activism needs to take time, right? You don't just go in and judge a population and demand that they change all their ways because you find them disgusting. Because, in these communities that practice cutting, when they think about you not having had this done, they find that disgusting too. So what you want to do is just focus on making sure options are available. And over time, maybe people will choose not to do this, and then the norm that they're conforming to will be the thing that you want. But forcing these things upon people and judging them and labeling them as barbaric and as mutilated is not going to be the way forward. And now for the rape joke of the week. If a tree falls in the forest and nobody's there to hear it, and Ivan Henry is found factually innocent of all charges against him, is he still guilty of rape? Of course he is.